soaked, Darvan-addled maniac who locked himself in manacles for the cover of Rolling Stone. Being a fan since the early days, I'd read all the hair-raising stories. Most turned out to be true, and many are in this book, recounted in the words of eyewitnesses, cohorts, and victims. Some of it's ugly and unflattering to Warren, but he wanted it all told after he was gone. "I got to be Jim Morrison," he'd say, "a lot longer than he did." Warren had been clean and sober for years when we first met in 1991. He turned up at a book signing in Hollywood, and afterward we went out for Turkish coffee and talked about the private torture of writing. Warren was staggeringly gifted at his craft, a fact occasionally overshadowed in these pages by his off-duty escapades. What had drawn me and many other writers to his music were the lyrics, cunning, cutting, and yet often elegant. Warren was contemptuous of the term genius, but there was authentic genius in many of his songs. I quoted him whenever possible, including these marvelous lines, which I borrowed for a newspaper column that I wrote after waking up in the Beverly Hills Four Seasons during an earthquake. "And if California slides into the ocean, like the mystics and statistics say it will, I predict this motel will be standing until I pay my bill." Since we lived a continent apart, he in California, me in Florida, we didn't see each other much, though we talked frequently. After some mild nagging, Warren finally agreed to come fishing in the Keys so we could go over a couple of songs that we were writing together for an album that would be called Mutineer. He arrived wearing Prada shoes, but by the end of the trip he was in high-caliber Hemingway mode, minus the drinking. One afternoon he hooked a large tarpon, which jumped spectacularly while dragging our guide's small skiff back and forth around the Channel 3 bridge. The fish eventually broke the line, leaving Warren crestfallen, but in awe. On a later outing, he brought an odd flute that he was learning to play, and practiced whenever the fishing was slow. He was a compulsive picture taker, and insisted that I snap his photograph at a local tourist trap while he posed with an enormous plaster lobster the size of a Piper Cherokee. Strangers were sometimes unnerved by Warren's growl and acid wit, but to me the most intimidating thing about him was the breadth of his intellect. A prodigious reader, he could talk knowledgeably about Marcel Proust, Thomas Mann, or Mickey Spillane, all in the same conversation. Likewise, a casual chat about music could carom from Radiohead to Brian Wilson to Shostakovich, at which point all I could do was nod and pretend I understood what the hell he was talking about. That his own work was underappreciated has always been a mystery to Warren's fans, and was a source of bitter frustration for him. His most widely played song, Werewolves of London, is a darkly droll ditty that he'd knocked out in a few hours after one of the Everly Brothers suggested the title. Yet, masterpieces such as Desperados Under the Eaves or The Indifference of Heaven are seldom heard on the radio. Warren was the first to admit that when it came to career management, he was sometimes his own worst enemy. It was no less true in his private life. He could be a saint or a son of a bitch, and along the way there was heavy collateral damage to friends, lovers, and the two people about whom he cared most deeply, his son and daughter. He liked to say he had no regrets, but in truth he was sick with guilt about his serial disappearing acts while Jordan and Ariel were growing up. They might have forgiven him, but Warren never forgave himself. As for the many, many women in his past, he was as incorrigible as he was charming. I'd never seen a word of his private journals until Crystal, Warren's ex-wife, sent me the manuscript of this book. It was eye-opening, to put it mildly. Obviously, Warren wasn't kidding about channeling Jim Morrison. God only knows where he found the time to write songs. Yet write he did, and he left behind a wildly intelligent...
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.